They were supposed to deliver wins and championships, but all they've given their teams is headaches and broken promises. These are the biggest salary cap burdens, the worst contracts in the NBA today. The Philadelphia 76ers are the team with the worst short-term future in the NBA because they have not one, but two horrible contracts on the books. Of course, we're talking about Joel Embiid and Paul George, whose injuries not only ruined the 2025 season for the Sixers, but they will probably ruin the next 3 seasons as well. Embiid played just 19 games in 2025, and when he did suit up, he played without explosiveness, without power, and looked beaten and exhausted. He was a complete shadow of his former self. The 2023 MVP was still effective from mid-range and the free throw line, but the strength and athleticism he demonstrated throughout his career simply evaporated. And defensively, he was even worse. Embiid's lateral movement, which had always fascinated given his height and bulk, had completely disappeared. Joel became so bad that teams systematically put him in the pick and roll, and guards ran by him like he wasn't even there. The man didn't suddenly forget how to play, but it was painfully clear that he needed to be shut down and get surgery on his ailing knee. In the 2024 offseason, Embiid signed a 3-year, $193 million extension, which will keep him on the Sixers' payroll until 2029, when he'll be earning a whopping $67 million. And due to his constant knee injuries and the complicated solutions, which include low-level radiation therapy, meniscus replacement, microfracture surgery, and osteotomy, which involves cutting bone to correct an axial deformity in the leg, Joel's and the Sixers' future doesn't look good. Embiid is 31, with numerous knee injuries behind him, and it would be a miracle if he ever regained his old form. And the same can be said about his teammate Paul George, who spent the majority of the 2025 season battling groin and knee injuries, which could also require surgery in the offseason. Like Embiid, George looked like a shell of the player he once was, averaging just 16 points on 43% shooting. His perimeter defense, which was once his main calling card, has been shredded to pieces, and PG-13 is one of the main reasons why Philly has the 4th worst defense in the NBA. George turned 35, he made $49 million in 2025, and will earn north of $50 million until 2028, when he'll be 38 years old. With one healthy knee between them, Embiid and George are like two 500-pound stones tied to the Sixers' legs, weighing them down to the bottom of the standings. But superstars don't have to be injured to hamper their team's future. After the Suns made the 2021 NBA Finals and won a franchise record 64 games in 2022, Phoenix went star hunting. First, they acquired Kevin Durant, giving up Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, 4 first-round picks, and a pick swap. But that kind of yield was expected for a superstar of Durant's stature. And when you can get Kevin Durant, you go for it, no matter the cost. The problem was the second big trade the Suns made, when they acquired Bradley Beal from the Washington Wizards. Phoenix gave up Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, 4 first-round pick swaps, and 6 second-round picks for Beal. But the Suns weren't done there. A few months later, they also traded DeAndre Ayton and a guy who has the potential to become a Defensive Player of the Year, Toumani Camara, for Grayson Allen, Yusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson in a blockbuster 3-team deal that sent Damian Lillard to Milwaukee. In the span of 6 months, the Suns acquired 2 thick layers of golden paint, but they lost their engine. In the 2024 season, Phoenix could never find proper offensive balance with their 3 superstars, finishing with just the 10th best offensive rating in the NBA. Defensively, they regressed from the 3rd best defense in 2022 to 13th, and when they faced the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round of the playoffs, it was an abomination. The Suns could do nothing to stop Anthony Edwards and the Wolves, getting swept from the playoffs, allowing more than 120 points in 3 out of the 4 games. But worst of all is that they couldn't do anything to help themselves in the following season, and it was all because of Beal and his mammoth contract. Not only is Beal massively overplayed for a player who's weak defensively and doesn't even average 20 points, but he also owns a no-trade clause, as the only player in the NBA other than LeBron James who has the power to veto any trade. Beal is 32 years old. He made $50 million in 2025 and is owed $110 million through 2027, which makes his contract arguably the worst in the NBA. In 2025, the Suns didn't even make the play-in, and after the season, they'll have to trade Kevin Durant and go into a rebuild. There isn't a team in the NBA dumb enough to trade for Beal, which means the Suns are stuck with him without any future draft picks. However, the Suns aren't the only ones who traded all their picks for a mediocre player. Just look at Minnesota, who made one of the dumbest trades in recent memory when they paid a king's ransom to acquire Rudy Gobert. Granted, Gobert was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year at the time, and in 2024 he added another with Minnesota. But Gobert is also a limited offensive player who averaged just 12 points per game throughout his career, with more turnovers than assists. For such a one-dimensional player, the Wolves gave up 5 players, 4 first-round picks, and a pick swap, which is more than the Suns gave up for KD. The modern NBA is an offensive league based on three-point shooting, and to pay such a hefty price for a defensive specialist, it's beyond comprehension. But to make things even worse, 2 of the players that the Wolves gave up are arguably better defenders than Rudy. Like Gobert, Jared Vanderbilt is a defensive specialist, but unlike Rudy, he does most of his work on the perimeter, hounding the best opposing scorers with limitless energy, quick lateral movement, and long arms. In today's NBA, where 40% of all shots come from behind the three-point arc, having strong perimeter defense is arguably more valuable than rim protection. Vanderbilt is also more valuable on the offensive end and can hit the occasional three-pointer. But if Minnesota really wanted a good protector, they already had one in Walker Kessler. Now, to be fair, Kessler was just a rookie who didn't play a single minute of NBA basketball at the time of the trade, and nobody could have predicted how good he was going to be. But Kessler, the 22nd pick of the 2022 NBA draft, proved to be a phenomenal rim protector, averaging 2.4 blocks per game in his 3 seasons with Utah, which is better than what Gobert averages in Minnesota. In 2025, Kessler was 3rd in the NBA in field goal percentage. He led the league in offensive rebounds, and when you think the Wolves also traded Patrick Beverley and Malik Beasley, who's one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, plus all those picks, it's a disaster. But that's not all, because Gobert also has a salary like he's pooping gold.
I'm not going to hate, but this should be an inspiration to all the little kids out there. If you average 11 points in the NBA, you can get $200 million.
Only 14 other players have made more money than the Frenchman during his 3-year tenure in Minnesota. And because of his $43 million contract, the Wolves were forced to trade Karl Anthony Towns. Sure, Towns has his faults defensively, but the modern NBA is an offensive league, and Towns might be the best shooting center of all time. But somehow, the Wolves didn't stop there. Before the start of the 2025 season, Minnesota gave Rudy more money, signing him for 3 more years and $110 million. Considering that Gobert will be 33 years old in the first year of his new contract, and everything that the Wolves gave up for him, he is one of the most overpriced players in NBA history. And while this next player isn't technically overpriced because he's one of the best players in the league, when you factor in how rarely he plays, he becomes one of the most overpriced players in NBA history on a per-game basis. And it's a shame that Kawhi Leonard needs to be mentioned. But since he signed with the Clippers, the Claw has played in just 56% of their games. Even worse, until the 2025 playoffs, Leonard has been healthy in only 1 postseason, getting hurt every time the Clippers have made the playoffs in the previous 4 years.
Sources tell me that Kawhi Leonard is expected to be sidelined for the start of this NBA season.
Kawhi Leonard will be sidelined indefinitely to start the season.
Kawhi made $49 million in 2025, and he's due to make an additional $50 million in 2026 and 2027, which wouldn't be a problem if he were available. If we divide the amount he's earned by the amount of games he's played for the Clippers, Kawhi made $730,000 for each game he suited up for, which is a hefty price, and why he's got to be mentioned among the worst contracts in the NBA. But Kawhi isn't the only future first-ballot Hall of Famer with a contract that's a little too pricey. Even before his injury, Damian Lillard's contract was too big for this phase of his career, despite his gaudy offensive stats. Yes, Lillard is still an offensive juggernaut, averaging an efficient 25 points and 7 assists per game. His pick-and-roll game with Giannis is a thing of beauty, and easily one of the most unstoppable plays in basketball. And while Dame was never known as a defensive stopper, despite a 6'8" wingspan and a strong lower body, his defense has improved with the Bucks, and he's not taken plays off defensively like he did with Portland when he had to carry a much bigger offensive load. However, even with a healthy Lillard, the Bucks were mediocre. But then, on April 27th, everything fell down the drain. Lillard tore his Achilles, which will sideline him for the entire 2026 season, when he'll be making $58 million. With Dame time not ticking at all in 2026, the Bucks' best course forward is to trade Giannis and go into a rebuild. And And because Lillard is 35 now, with a $63 million player option for 2027, which he'll certainly exercise, the Bucks are like a deer in the headlights, headed for a hard collision with the bottom of the standings. Now, it's easy to recognize bad contracts for superstars who are still earning lofty amounts past their prime. But how about role players who aren't even living up to their role? One such example plays in Chicago, and his name is Patrick Williams. On paper, Williams is a general manager's and coach's dream, a 6'7" wing with a 7-foot wingspan, who can knock down three-pointers with 40% accuracy. But in reality, Patrick is one of those players who never developed after their rookie season. Defensively, he has all the tools to be a lockdown stopper, but he often gets blown by, looks disengaged and unfocused, and is often ball-watching the action, which leaves his man open. It's the same story offensively, when he mostly camps in the corner waiting for the ball, watching the play unfold and not cutting into open spaces. Williams is also an average rebounder for his position and plays like a black hole, offering zero creation when he has the ball.
But then the next time he comes down, grabs the ball, and then it's almost like paralysis by analysis. Woo. And then you're like, damn it, son. Now just pass it ahead, because now you're letting valuable time go off the shot clock.
He's not physical enough, and at times he looks invisible on the court, just doing cardio and not leaving any imprint on the game. Patrick's averages look exactly the same now in his 5th year as they did when he was a rookie, with one major difference. In his first 4 seasons, he was at least knocking down his shots with 41% shooting from deep. But in 2025, his shot was atrocious. Williams made just 39% of his field goals and 35% behind the arc. Before the 2025 season started, Williams signed a 5-year, $90 million extension. But unfortunately for the Bulls, it looks like he's one of those players who doesn't really love basketball, and his only motivation was to score a big contract. And he's not the only one. Similar to Williams, DeJounte Murray regressed after getting a 4-year, $114 million deal with the Atlanta Hawks. In 2022, while he was still with the Spurs, Murray made an All-Star team, led the league in steals,
and DeJounte comes away with the steal,
and was considered an elite two-way guard. But that was the peak of his career, and the Spurs sniffed it out before everyone else. After his All-Star season, they traded DeJounte to Atlanta for a bunch of picks, fully immersing into tank mode for Victor Wembanyama. The Hawks hoped that Murray would become one half of the best backcourt in the NBA, and that his game would fit perfectly with Trae Young, who's an offensive genius but a below-average defender. But their dreams never materialized. Even though Murray continued to score over 20 points per game, his defense regressed, and DeJounte and Trae were never the right fit. So they traded DeJounte to New Orleans, who stupidly gave them Dyson Daniels and 2 first-round picks. Not only is Daniels a much better defender than Murray, averaging a league-leading 3 steals per game in 2025, but his offense has also picked up too, while DeJounte's has plummeted. Murray shot just 39% from the field and 30% from 3 with the Pelicans. And to make matters worse, he tore his Achilles, arguably the worst injury in basketball. With 3 years and $95 million left on his deal, this trade might haunt the Pelicans for a long time. But they aren't alone. The Miami Heat made a similar mistake in 2024 when they traded for Terry Rozier, only to watch his production fall off a cliff. When he was in Charlotte, Rozier was putting up near all-star numbers, averaging 20 points and 5 assists per game. Miami, at least, didn't give up too much for Rozier, just the expiring contract of Kyle Lowry and a first-round pick. But given the way Rozier has played since the trade, even one first-rounder looks like a steal for Charlotte. In 2025, Terry averaged just 10.6 points per game on bad 39% shooting and 29% for 3, showing that he's only capable of putting up numbers on bad teams.
No matter how you slice it, Terry Rozier is making it increasingly difficult to ignore just how bad he's been. And we're at the point where this nightmare season for him has reached rock bottom.
Scary Terry's been almost unplayable at times, and Coach Spoelstra didn't play him at all in the 2025 playoffs. Rozier did not perform at the level that the Heat expected, while earning $25 million this year, with $26 million left on his deal in 2026. Another guy who regressed after he signed a big contract earned $27 million in 2025 and will pocket $133 million more through 2028. It's Jeremy Grant, a player formerly known as a lockdown defender and a knockdown shooter, which is not something we can say anymore. In his first 2 seasons with the Blazers, Grant averaged over 20 points per game, with a 53% effective field goal percentage. But in 2025, he only averaged 14 points, shooting a horrible 37% from the field. And given that he's over 31 years old, with 4 years left on his contract, the Blazers can only hope that his form picks up, because Grant is currently as untradeable as it gets. His teammate DeAndre Ayton is in a similar boat, albeit with a shorter length on his contract. The former #1 pick in the 2018 draft had a few good years with the Suns, but since the 2022 finals, Ayton has regressed year after year. The man who calls himself Dominatin' does very little dominating these days, averaging 14 points per game and playing mediocre defense. Portland had better success with rookie center Donovan Clingan, even though Ayton's the highest paid player on the team, earning $34 million this season. Thankfully for all the Blazers fans, DeAndre has only 1 year left on his deal, and he'll make $36 million in 2026, but it wouldn't be a surprise if he gets traded in the near future. That said, Portland's future looks a whole lot brighter than Toronto's, who have given questionable long-term extensions to 2 different players. The Knicks traded Emmanuel quickly because they didn't want to pay him, and in return they got OG Anunoby, who's one of the best defenders in the NBA. It was obvious that Quickly was going to get paid by the Raptors, but it's a complete mystery why they gave him a 5-year, $175 million extension. Sure, Quickly is a speed demon, a microwave scorer who can get hot in a split second, but such players are usually coming off the bench. And with the Knicks, Quickly started just 27 out of 253 games. But the Raptors saw something more in him, and they paid him like he was a borderline all-star. However, so far it hasn't yielded results, as Quickly only slightly increased his averages, while his efficiency decreased, and he still hasn't shown that he can be a full-time point guard in the NBA.
Is he a top-notch facilitator? We haven't really seen that. Is he a bucket getter? He could be, but he doesn't look for his own shot.
But the same thing they did with Quickly, the Raptors then repeated with Brandon Ingram. In 2025, Ingram was in the last year of his contract, and the Pelicans tried their hardest to trade him all season long with no results. But then came the Raptors, who gave him a 3-year, $120 million contract before he even played a single game for the Canadian team. On paper, Ingram is a triple threat. He can shoot, pass, and dribble, averaging 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists during his 6-year tenure in New Orleans. But in reality, a lot of his points are just empty calories on bad teams. And given his lengthy injury history and the demeanor that screams, "I'm all about my numbers and not team success," it's gonna get really cold in Canada. Speaking of Canadians, how about Jamal Murray, whose partnership with Nikola Jokic propelled the Nuggets to an NBA championship? In 2025, Jamal had another strong season, with 21 points and 6 assists on average, shooting 47% from the field and 39% from 3. When he gets hot, Murray can look like the best point guard in the NBA. And with the 55 points he scored against Portland, Jamal has the 5th highest scoring performance of 2025. However, the big problem with Murray isn't his play. It's his inability to stay healthy for longer periods. Throughout the last 5 years, the Canadian point guard has battled many injuries, including the ACL tear that forced him to miss the entire 2022 season. In September 24, Murray signed a 4-year, $208 million extension that kicks in next season and will earn him $62 million in 29. And if he manages to stay healthy, that's fine, given his efficiency and chemistry with the Joker. But if he keeps getting hurt, that contract could become a problem for the Nuggets. And it's a lot of money for a player who never made the All-Star team and has never averaged more than 21 points per game.
When is he going to raise his level of play to All-Star level? We're not even talking All-NBA, just All-Star level, and help Jokic out. He's averaging about 17 points right now.
Thank you for watching. And if you like this video, we have another one for you right here.